a very special guest who I didn't know was coming on the show. Anthony didn't get a chance to tell me before we went to break. So we are talking about the NBA playoffs. We are going to talk about Jordan Poole and that shot last night. But you don't just have to hear me yap about it. We got Tony Massenburg with us. Tony, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So last night, Warriors have a furious comeback. Very fun to watch Steph and Klay do their thing. Jordan Poole has a nice game. He's 6 of 10 going into what ultimately is the final possession. But then he kind of casually takes about a 31-footer with the Warriors down 3. If you are someone not named Jordan Poole on the Warriors, how are you feeling as that shot leaves his hand?
Well, at the press conference, you're going to say you support him on the shot. But in the locker room, I think you're going to say, you know, I had a couple of issues. Number one, my first issue was him taking the shot, you know, when he took the shot. The timing of the shot I thought was bad. But at the end of the day, worse than his shot was, I'm looking at Steve Kerr, and I'm saying to myself, when you see Steph get trapped in the corner, when you obviously see that the Lakers are going to force the ball out of his hands, I'm thinking that you take the time out and try to draw something up to get either Steph Curry or Klay Thompson a good shot, you know, at the rim. Not one where you're coming down and the Lakers have essentially walled off Stephen Curry to the point where he has to give the ball up because he's literally 40, 45 feet away from the rim. And then he gives it up to Draymond Green, who is a non-shooter who was, you know, 38 feet from the rim. And then he passes it to Jordan Poole, who, as you say, ends up, you know, wide open for a reason, I might add, because, you know, I'm sure the Lakers, if they're going to roll the dice on who takes a 31-foot shot to you know, put the Warriors back in it, they're going to choose Jordan Poole over Steph Curry any day of the week. But I honestly thought the Warriors should have called a timeout once it became clear that the Lakers were forcing the ball out of Steph Curry's hand.
So that's the thing, though, Tony. Like, he's 6 of 10 in the game on threes. Jordan Poole's an excellent shooter. To me, it's the timing and the just super casual nature with which he did. Like, at that point in the game, it's also where, like, do you have the awareness of where you are on the court if you're Jordan Poole? Like, why isn't he 27 feet ready to catch and shoot versus, like, 31 feet? There's no one in front of me. There's 8 seconds left. Might as well throw this up. Like, is that the kind of conversation you're having with him today more than, like, you're not allowed to shoot? That should have been Steph or Klay.
It's not that he's not allowed to shoot, because let's be honest. We've seen Jordan Poole knock down 30-foot shots before. I mean, that's how he got the contract. That's how he got, you know, an extension, because he made a couple of shots like that last year at crucial times. Long shots, 28 feet, 30-foot shots. He made those shots last year. But for me, the timing was bad on the shot. And as I said, I would have liked to have seen Steve Kerr draw up a play to get either Steph Curry, first option, or Klay Thompson, second option, the chance to make that shot if you're going to end up taking a long shot, which they probably would have had to end up taking a three-pointer. It's just a matter of, you know, how long that shot was going to be. But to come down in the middle, you know, to come down in sort of a frenzy kind of way, you know, where the clock's winding down and the Lakers make a conservative effort to force the ball out of Steph Curry's hands, that was strategic on Darvin Ham's part, on the Lakers' part. And so I thought, you know, from a strategy standpoint, Steve Kerr could have called a timeout. He had 2 timeouts remaining. He could have called a timeout at that point just to get something set up to where they could have gotten a better look.
Tony Massenburg with us, analyst, NBC Sports Washington, longtime NBA veteran here on the Hoffman Show. So the other obvious dominant storyline from this game is how good Anthony Davis was, defensively especially. He's been so incredible in these playoffs. The offense is coming on, even to a point last night. Monster first half, quieter in the second half, but 23 rebounds. How much confidence do you have in him to be able to keep that up versus your confidence in the Warriors to be able to make adjustments and limit his effectiveness enough? Considering, again, like we're talking about a one-possession game with 10 seconds to go, all they have to do is shave the margins and play in a similar level offensively, and they can win. So how, like, where's your confidence slider at? Anthony Davis continuing, Warriors able to make an adjustment?
if I had to roll a dice on one of those two things, I'm probably going to say the Warriors making an adjustment because I haven't seen AD sustain this high level of play for an entire series. And sometimes it's been due to injury. Other times it's been due to the fact that he just seems to have really high lows and highs and lows and peaks and valleys in his performance where you don't know what you're going to get game to game. And I expect the Warriors to make a slight defensive adjustment on him to maybe try to make his life a little more difficult. Maybe Looney becomes more physical with him. But listen, when I look at the front line of the Golden State Warriors, they don't have anybody to guard Anthony Davis. They don't have an athletic 7-footer or a 6'10" guy who's quick enough and strong enough to really affect him physically. He's going to go by Kevon Looney anytime he feels like it. He's going to shoot over top of both Kevon Looney and Draymond Green anytime he feels like it because neither one of them are big enough. And at the end of the day, if they choose to play him like they played Sabonis in the series against the Kings, they're going to get burned because AD's going to knock those shots down. And so can AD keep up the offensive performance? I absolutely think that he can. The question is, will he? Defensively, I thought that what he did last night was as valuable as what he did on the offensive end because when you think about the fact that Steph Curry is not only the greatest shooter we've ever seen, but he's also very effective getting to the rim and scoring points in the paint. That's what people don't get about Steph Curry as far as his overall ability to score. It's not just three-pointers. He shoots teardrop, floaters. He gets to the rim, and he did that against the Kings partly because they don't have any shot blockers. Well, guess what? Anthony Davis is a shot blocker, and we saw that. 4 block shots last night, a couple of them on Steph Curry going to the basket. And so he can limit what the Warriors like to do offensively and make life harder for guys in the paint. And if he brings the type of energy that he brought last night for the next 6 games, if this is to go be a 7-game series, it's going to require some adjustments for the Warriors. My belief is that the Warriors have to win this game on the offensive end because I'm not really sure that they can defensively really compete with the Lakers having bigger, more athletic guys, not just on the front line, but on the wings as well.
Yeah, so the one name that I think is super interesting as a potential X factor is Jonathan Kuminga because he is 6'10" and just one of the craziest athletes in the NBA. The problem is he's super young and undisciplined, and Steve Kerr hasn't been playing him so far in these playoffs. But Kerr has shown a propensity to play guys and just have his rotation swing wildly series to series, game to game, and kind of everyone stays ready. Do you think that he could pull that card, and do you think it would matter? Are they going to have to make like an X's and O's strategic adjustment to try to move Anthony Davis around and play a little bit more chess than just switching out the pieces?
I think it's going to require adjustments. I think Steve Kerr may not want to play some of these younger athletic guys, but I think he's going to have to because I think what you saw last night is Draymond Green at 6'7" is not going to be able to stop Anthony Davis. Kevon Looney at 6'10", 6'9", 6'10", but more of a plotter, meaning a guy that kind of throws his body around in the painted area more so than having quick feet and playing above the rim. It's not going to affect Anthony Davis very much on the defensive end because AD is going to shoot right over the top of him. So it's going to require either more physicality or it's going to require some more athletic guys to really try to make life harder for AD and keep him away from the basket, be someone who can challenge his shot like a Kuminga. But when I look at Golden State's roster, I don't really see the bodies, the physicality that I think would be necessary to deter AD in the paint. And when I look at the Lakers, particularly on the perimeter with guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Austin Reeves, even when you look at D'Angelo Russell is a 6'5" point guard. So when you look at the guards for the Lakers, And I'm not even talking about LeBron, just the actual size and the fact that these guys are young and athletic, that's going to make life harder for not just Steph, but it makes life harder for Klay as well. And so with these two guys, if you're going to make them both work really hard for their baskets, I think it really comes down to how well the Golden State Warriors execute offensively, and that's going to require adjustments for Steve Kerr on that end. But defensively, he's got to find a way to slow down Anthony Davis.
Tony Massenburg with us here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. So one of the things that I posited yesterday, Tony, as I was talking through the strategy and the matchups and everything in this series, it sounds counterintuitive because you'd like to just stick Anthony Davis in a corner and make him babysit someone and be away from the rim, and that's just not going to be possible because they're gonna stick him on someone who's going to be involved. But if I'm Kerr, one of the things that I would mess with, and I'm curious what you think of this idea, is actually involving Davis in the pick and roll a lot to try to open up. And that's going to involve the ball swinging side to side a lot. It's going to involve multiple pick and roll actions. But if I'm Steve Kerr, I got to figure out how to get him out of the lane for the exact reason you said earlier. I need Curry to be able to drive. I want Klay to be able to get downhill. Draymond, they're so good as a cutting team. Would you consider just, hey, we're going to run pick and roll from 28, 30 feet and have Anthony Davis come out? And if he wants to play drop coverage, fine, we'll shoot over the top of it because we're us and we can make threes better than everyone else. And if not, then we'll hopefully win the foot race to the rim, and that also opens up Kevon Looney for the offensive rebounding situation.
Well, I like what you just said there as far as getting him involved and forcing him to do some things defensively. But I like it for this reason. Anthony Davis played, I think, 44 minutes last night. I have a hard time imagining a 6 or 7 game series where he's going to be required to come out and play 40-plus minutes every single game of the series. I think at some point that will wear on him, and involving him in the pick and roll where he has to jump out and do additional work on the defensive end, I think will eventually start to affect his offense, because the one thing that we traditionally say in the NBA is when you have great scorers, a lot of times the only way you can stop them is to go at them and to make them work on the defensive end, hoping that you take some little bit of the energy away from them and take the legs away from them so that they're not, kind of resting on defense and then they're fresh. The only guy that I really didn't see that work too well for, or maybe two guys I saw that didn't really work against, was Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So, outside of those two guys being, two of the best scorers the game's ever seen, and guys who also defended at a high level, particularly MJ, most guys, it affects their offense. And I think if you are able to involve Anthony Davis in the defensive scheme a little more by forcing him out on the perimeter, getting him away from the basket where he's obviously been effective blocking shots, then I think that, potentially could open things up for you if you're the Warriors. But once again, that comes back to Steve Kerr making some adjustments, not just in the scheme, but potentially personnel-wise and involving people where Anthony Davis is going to have to do a little bit more work on the defensive end and hope that takes away from his offensive production.
Tony Massenburg, great NBA analyst with us, longtime NBA vet as well, on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. So last thing on this series is the other great player. How have we talked this much and not talked about LeBron? But he certainly did what he does last night, impactful on the defensive end, kind of a well-balanced offensive stat sheet with a lot of columns ticked. But I do wonder, Tony, about the exact thing you just mentioned. LeBron finally, after 20 seasons at age 38, how dare he show a single sign of aging? But it does seem like he doesn't have quite the energy that he used to night to night. Do you think he can sustain over the course of the series with the style and the pace that the Warriors play? And also, what did you just think of his night last night?
I thought he had a great night, and let's consider the fact that the Lakers had a couple of more days rest than the Warriors did when you consider the fact that the Lakers were able to close out the Grizzlies. And we talked about how spent LeBron James looked in that series against the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, if you're the Golden State Warriors, I think you have to turn this into a track meet, and for the exact same reasons that we've been talking about, because when you look at what LeBron potentially can do as far as his passing ability, being able to sometimes still make those rundown blocks in transition, he's still one of the best athletes in the league, despite his 38 years of age and his 20 years in the league. So the more you can turn this into a track meet and make it less about grinded up basketball, I think that's what you have to do if you're the Golden State Warriors. And I think the formula last night, when you looked at the Warriors, I'm looking at a little bit of residual, wear from that series against the Kings, where you saw the Kings really kind of run the Warriors a little bit. Well, I think the Warriors have to now turn the tables and look at the Lakers and say, hey, you got bigger, more athletic guys, but, we need to run you guys because that's where we flourish. When you look at the Golden State Warriors, they flourish in transition. They're great at cutting off of one another and getting some easy baskets. That has to start happening for the Warriors, because if they have to continuously work as hard as I saw Steph Curry and Klay Thompson work for those baskets last night, it's going to be tough for them to overcome the size that the Lakers had, the size advantage that the Lakers have on them, not just on the interior, but on the perimeter as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you saw that last night. Draymond, as soon as he got the ball, especially early in that game last night, was off, like with extreme pace. Kerr said it after the game, too, that even though they lost, like they had that great run to make it interesting late, and he thinks that they were the fresher team down the stretch. So you'd have to imagine as the series wears on, that could easily become a factor. As for the other series that played last night, Miami, New York now 1-1. And if you're Miami, you undoubtedly feel great going back. You split the games in New York and you almost won game 2 without Jimmy Butler. What do you make so far of this series? And if you're New York, like, how concerned are you that what I just said that makes Miami feel good is also true on the reverse end for you?
Well, similar to the Los Angeles Lakers and the Warriors on the perimeter, Jalen Brunson is the guy that really makes the New York Knicks go. And Jalen Brunson is barely 6 feet tall. They list him at 6'1", or I'm going to say he's closer to 6 feet. And when you look at the Miami Heat, they got a lot of size on the perimeter and athleticism as well. And that's making life a little bit tougher for him. When I look at that series, you harken back to the Lakers and the Warriors, where AD is really the X factor for the Lakers. Well, I'm looking at Julius Randle being the X factor for the Knicks. And the fact that you didn't have your best player in Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat last night, and the Knicks struggled mightily to win that game, that's the reason why you should feel good if you're the Miami Heat. If Jimmy can get over that ankle and not have it affect him, I got the Miami Heat coming out of that series simply because I think when you look at both rosters, Miami is ascending right now. You get this feeling that Miami is just getting better game by game, that the depth in which Spoelstra can call on, the number of guys that he can call on to come in and be effective has increased. Guys are getting more confident. They're gelling as a unit. Whereas when you look at the Knicks, you have to start to wonder if they've already peaked or if they have any room left to continue to improve in this series. And I'm not sure. Jalen Brunson doesn't look the same in this series as he looked in the last series. And I say that's because of the defense that the Miami Heat is playing. And when I look at Julius Randle, he's been inconsistent. And if that's going to be the case where, he's not going to be able to have those big scoring outputs on a nightly basis in this series, then I think it's going to be tough, because once you get past him, you don't have a lot of scorers. R.J. Barrett is a guy that's really stepped up and enabled the Knicks to be productive offensively at a high level, but he's also been consistent over the course of the season. And so if these two guys, have off nights, and combined with the fact that Jalen Brunson hasn't been the same in this series and may not be the same just based on what Miami is doing on the defensive side of the basketball, then you have to be worried as a Knicks fan But when I look at Miami from a team standpoint, the philosophy of defense first, team basketball, and the traditional Miami Heat that struggles to score points all of a sudden is knocking down three-pointers, is getting backdoor cuts, and is playing a really enthusiastic brand of basketball on the offensive end. And they're being led by a guy in Jimmy Butler who is, turned into playoff Jimmy once again. And I think that just instills a lot of confidence in the team. So I'm looking at Miami right now. They seem to be ascending and getting better. And right now the Knicks are looking a little bit stagnant. So if that doesn't change, I don't think this series will go 7 games in favor. I don't think it'll go 7 games. It'll be the Heat, in 5, maybe 6.
Yeah, and the Knicks are also a team that you mentioned, like a guy like Barrett, road home splits this season and in the playoffs, if I'm remembering correctly. Not very good for him in terms of his ability to keep it up on the road. So huge test when they resume their series, which I believe is tomorrow night. It might be Friday, though, when that series resumes. Tony, this was great. We will definitely have you back later on in the playoffs. Talk some more ball. Appreciate the time, and we'll have you back soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Tony Massenburg, everybody. NBC Sports Washington studio analyst and longtime NBA vet. I always love having Tony on, especially because he wasn't a guy, we don't need to inflate his resume. He's not a guy that played a lot over his career, but he's just one of these guys that's been around great NBA teams, great NBA players, great NBA coaches, and has a depth of knowledge that is super valuable and can help explain the game to us here on the radio. So I very much appreciate his time and always love the chance to chat with him.
This is Wes Unseld Jr.
Beal, left wing outside the arc, stops, takes a 3, it's there!
You listen to The Hoffman Show on Team 980.
Assassin-like.
The Odyssey app.